And then we got Blake Lively versus Baldoni, a big up.
Blake Lively believed she was gearing up to take Justin Baldoni to court. But what if the entire case ends before it even starts? Baldoni's legal team has just filed a motion that could dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice, permanently blocking Blake from refiling. The stakes couldn't be higher. At the heart of this battle lies a clash between California and New York laws, a technicality that might decide everything. One wrong interpretation, and the judge could end it all in a single ruling. Stay tuned, because this early decision might change the entire course of their legal fight.
You've retaliated against Baldoni, that's out there. Yeah, the complaint is gone, but like, this is not good. I don't know who's telling these people to do well in PR, because they're doing terrible PR. They should have left well enough alone, and now this is a new front that I don't think will get much traction. I don't think a judge will order you to do anything. And if they do, like you said, well, that means you'll do things for both sides.
What if Blake Lively never even gets her day in court because Justin Baldoni may have discovered the legal shortcut that could freeze her case before it ever starts? That's not speculation, it's strategy. Baldoni's lawyers have filed a powerful motion that could shut down Blake's lawsuit entirely, long before a jury ever hears a word. Most people picture lawsuits as drawn-out courtroom dramas, filled with emotional testimonies, fiery cross-examinations, and shocking twists. But in reality, the legal system can end a battle almost instantly if one side knows how to play the technical game. And that's exactly what Baldoni's team is doing. The maneuver they're using is called a motion for judgment on the pleadings, or MJOP. In simple terms, it means they're asking the judge to look only at what's already written, the complaint and the responses. No new evidence, no witnesses, no discovery. They're saying even if every single thing Blake wrote is true, it still doesn't add up to a valid legal claim. It's one of the coldest, most surgical moves in litigation, a way to kill a case without ever stepping into a courtroom. And the most ruthless part? Baldoni's lawyers aren't just asking for the case to be dismissed. They want it dismissed with prejudice. That phrase carries serious weight. It means Blake wouldn't just lose this round, she'd lose the entire fight forever. No appeals, no refiling, no chance to start over. Once the judge signs that order, the case is legally dead. So why take such an aggressive approach? Baldoni's team argues that even accepting Blake's entire version of events as fact, her claims don't actually meet the legal definition of what she's accusing him of. It's like alleging you were robbed but admitting in the same statement that nothing was taken. The story might sound emotional, but it doesn't qualify under the law. That's the trap they're setting. And if the judge agrees, Blake's entire case collapses before it even breathes. The implications are huge. If this motion succeeds, there will be no discovery, meaning no exchange of private messages, no behind-the-scenes emails, and no chance for the public to glimpse the inner workings of the feud. Everything that's driven public curiosity so far, the whispered allegations, the texts, the too close for comfort details, could vanish overnight with a single ruling. For Blake, that would mean not just a legal loss, but a reputational one. It would reinforce the narrative that her case was built more on drama than legal substance. For Baldoni, it would be a quiet but devastating victory. And here's what makes it even more fascinating. This fight isn't just about what was said or done. It's about where the rules come from. The next big legal clash won't be over testimony or evidence. It'll be over jurisdiction. Which state's laws, California's or New York's, will dictate how this case unfolds. That question alone could decide everything. Because if Baldoni's team convinces the court that New York's stricter standards apply, Blake's claims might fail on a technicality before she ever gets to tell her story. In this kind of high-stakes chess match, one procedural move could rewrite the entire narrative. And this motion might be the one that ends the game before it begins.
What do you think's actually happening with this? Because they claim they dropped the subpoena right before they weren't going to deposition her. They said, and the rumors were, we got what we wanted. And then it's like, well, what did you get? Is what the big question mark is. The judge did deem that the texts are relevant. So do you think they got them and they're just holding that? Do you think they didn't get them? Can they still depose her? That's the other question of, they still have some time here. Can she literally say, no, I told you the dates I'm available, you didn't give me enough notice, and then what do you think the next step is?
Unless she says, I really am available before the 30th, or the date of the 20th date, the cutoff, that deposition cannot go forward. She can be called at trial later, and everybody gets to hear what she says then. That can happen, but she cannot be deposed past the cutoff date. and whether she's available or not because of Baldoni's doing now is irrelevant based on what the judge says. To answer your other question about why wait, what is this, 4 months later? That's a great question, Andy. And it might have to do with what they thought the significance of the text messages isn't as important now as it meant back in May. And they probably go, really do need to take her deposition for things that she needs to explain, or else we won't know until the day of trial, which is always a danger in front of a jury. When you're doing it live, you don't want to ask a question you don't already know the answer to in trial, because it could bite.
Why are lawyers suddenly arguing about maps instead of the actual allegations? Because, according to Justin Baldoni's legal team, this entire lawsuit might come down to something deceptively simple, yet deeply consequential: geography. At first, it sounds ridiculous. Two celebrities facing off in court. And instead of debating what was said or done, the spotlight is on which state's laws should control the fight. But that's exactly where the legal battlefield has shifted. Here's the setup. Blake Lively filed her lawsuit in California. However, Baldoni's attorneys argue that most of the alleged incidents happened thousands of miles away on the East Coast, in New York and New Jersey. Why does that matter? Because California and New York have completely different rule books when it comes to workplace retaliation and harassment. California's laws are famously broad, defining retaliation so widely that even subtle forms of exclusion or pressure can qualify. New York, on the other hand, takes a narrower, more traditional approach, requiring stronger proof of concrete harm. Think of it like two referees overseeing the same game. California blows the whistle for almost every foul, while New York lets most plays slide. Which referee gets to make the calls could decide whether Blake's case survives or disappears before trial. Here's where things get tricky. Under California's legal system, employees are usually required to file a complaint with the state's labor board before heading to court. Baldoni's lawyers claim Blake skipped that step entirely. If the judge rules that California law applies, her entire case could collapse on that procedural technicality alone. But if the court sides with Baldoni and determines New York law should govern, Blake faces a different problem. Many of the actions she's complaining about might not even qualify as retaliation under New York's stricter definitions. Either way, she's walking a tightrope. One technical oversight or a narrow legal interpretation could erase her lawsuit completely. This brings up the core question. What happens when one state's laws validate your story while another strips it of all legal weight? History shows how sharply the outcomes can diverge. In one case, a harassment claim was upheld under California's broader statutes, but would have been tossed instantly under New York's. In another, a company escaped a massive judgment simply because the events were tied to a state with weaker worker protections. Geography in these situations doesn't just set the scene, it rewrites the ending. And that's fueling speculation about Blake's legal strategy. Did she choose California not only because she resides there, but because its expansive labor laws offered her the strongest safety net? Baldoni's team seems to think so. They're pushing aggressively to shift the case away from California, framing her choice of venue as tactical rather than legitimate. For them, it's not just about defeating her claims, it's about changing the entire playing field so the rules favor their side. Yet, even as lawyers debate which coast controls the case, a subtler question lingers beneath it all. What if this wasn't workplace retaliation in the legal sense at all, but just Hollywood's favorite defense mechanism? What if what Blake describes as retaliation was really a coordinated PR maneuver, another behind-the-scenes story of image control gone wrong? If the judge leans that way, then no matter which state's laws apply, Blake Lively's case could end before it even begins, and this courtroom drama might fade into yet another Hollywood cautionary tale.
Boldly claims she placed the substance of the relevant information from Exhibit 1 in the public record, flatly ignoring that the person recorded without his consent, Mr. Sarowitz, should be allowed to have the entire recording made public to ensure accuracy and provide context. So he's of the Baha'i faith, right? Which is a very peaceful people, and yet he was accused of some pretty wild things. It's pretty much like the core of Blake Lively's argument, or part of it, is that he's willing to destroy her, as much money as it...
Blake Lively insists what she endured was retaliation, while Justin Baldoni fires back, claiming it was nothing more than Hollywood PR. So, who's actually telling the truth? That's the question at the center of this escalating legal showdown. On one side, Blake points to what she calls a calculated smear campaign. Negative headlines, subtle digs, and whispered gossip that she says were designed to chip away at her reputation. On the other, Baldoni's lawyers argue it wasn't personal. It was business as usual. The kind of orchestrated publicity the film industry runs on. They say the supposed attacks were simply promotional talking points, part of a decades-old marketing formula Hollywood has perfected. As a movie nears release, every quote, every rumor, every red carpet comment suddenly feels like part of the show. It's how studios build hype. Drop a little behind-the-scenes tension, tease some creative disagreements, and let social media do the rest. Publicists have used that playbook for years, stir up controversy, drive engagement, and watch the buzz translate into box office numbers. Baldoni's team insists that's all this was. PR spun into drama, not retaliation wrapped in scandal. But here's where it gets tricky. Can those same statements, presented as harmless publicity, cross the legal line into retaliation? That's the razor-thin distinction the court now has to navigate. If the purpose of the comments was professional, part of a marketing strategy, they fall under free speech protections. But if the intent was personal, to punish Blake for asserting herself or speaking out, that changes everything. Suddenly, what looks like PR becomes a weapon. Lively claims that's exactly what happened. She believes the stories and sound bites were deliberately shaped to make her seem unprofessional, difficult, even unstable. In her view, it wasn't promotion, it was punishment disguised as press. Baldoni's side, however, is standing firm. They say these are constitutionally protected statements made in the context of a public project. And when free speech enters the courtroom, the bar to prove retaliation gets significantly higher. Judges tread carefully, often favoring broad speech protections, even when the words sting or damage reputations. It's a dilemma as old as Hollywood itself. Actors, directors, and producers all trade jabs in interviews. Half serious, half for entertainment. One star calls another a perfectionist. A director jokes about who caused the most reshoots. The tabloids amplify it, fans debate it, and suddenly everyone's talking about the movie. It's marketing theater, and it works. But what happens when one of those jabs stops feeling like a joke? What if the shade isn't banter, but a calculated effort to discredit someone? That's where this case draws its fine line. If the judge rules Baldoni's team was simply engaging in industry-standard PR, the retaliation claim could collapse entirely. But if there's evidence those comments were driven by personal animus or meant to punish Blake for speaking out, that same PR could be reclassified as targeted harassment. And that's why this fight matters far beyond one lawsuit. The court's decision could redefine how Hollywood handles controversy in the age of instant headlines. If it sides with Blake, it sets a precedent that even subtle PR tactics can count as retaliation when intent crosses the line. But if it sides with Baldoni, it reaffirms that free speech in film promotion remains nearly untouchable. Either way, the outcome will echo across red carpets and press junkets for years, shaping how stars navigate their public battles when the cameras and the lawyers are both watching.
A lot of different updates, but this is a big one. It is a motion filed by Baldoni's legal team. Motion for judgment on the pleadings. Basically saying, hey, have you seen enough, Judge? Can we get this thing dismissed with prejudice? I'll explain what all of that means from one idiot to another. And then we've got Donald Trump, the President of the United States, sharing an AI video, a fake video of a reporter. Typical, this is truly fake news because it didn't actually happen.
Showdown isn't just Blake versus Justin. It's a test of how far Hollywood can blur the line between strategic PR and outright retaliation. In an industry that feeds on gossip, controversy has always been currency. But when that same chatter spills into a courtroom, the stakes shift dramatically. Suddenly, it's not just about headlines, it's about accountability. If the case gets dismissed before discovery even begins, the rumored evidence, the texts, emails, and behind-the-scenes messages never see daylight. All that remains are competing narratives, each crafted to shape public perception. For Blake, it's about proving she was targeted. For Justin, it's about showing it was all business. But without hard evidence, the truth becomes a matter of belief, not proof. So where does that leave the audience? The real jury in this modern media trial? Was this all masterful PR disguised as drama, or something darker and coordinated behind the curtain? One thing's for sure in Hollywood, image is everything.